Section 8 of The Spirit of Place and Other Essays. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Kate Follis. The Spirit of Place and Other Essays by Alice Meynell. Have patience, little saint. Some considerable time must have gone by since any kind of courtesy ceased, in England, to be held necessary in the course of communication with a beggar. Feeling may be humane, and the interior act most gentle. There may be a tacit apology, and a profound misgiving unexpressed, a reluctance not only to refuse but to be arbiter, a dislike of the office, a regret, whether for the unequal distribution of social luck, or for a purse left at home, equally sincere. Howbeit custom exacts no word or sign, nothing whatever of intercourse. If a dog or a cat accost you, or a calf in a field comes close to you with a candid infant face and breathing nostrils of investigation, or if any kind of animal comes to you on some obscure impulse of friendly approach, you acknowledge it. But the beggar, to whom you give nothing, expects no answer to a question, no recognition of his presence, not so much as the turn of your eyelid in his direction, and never a word to excuse you. Nor does this blank behaviour seem savage to those who are used to nothing else. Yet it is somewhat more inhuman to refuse an answer to the beggar's remark than to leave a shop without good morning. When complaint is made of the modern social manner, that it has no merit but what is negative, and that it is apt even to abstain from courtesy with more lack of grace than the abstinence absolutely requires, the habit of manner towards beggars is probably not so much as thought of. To the simply human eye, however, the prevalent manner towards beggars is a striking thing. It is significant of so much. Obviously, it is not easy to reply to begging, except by the intelligible act of giving. We have not the ingenuous simplicity that marks the caste answering more or less to that of Vere de Vere, in Italy, for example. An elderly Italian lady on her slow way from her own ancient ancestral palazzo to the village, and accustomed to meet empty-handed a certain number of beggars, answers them by a retort which would be, literally translated, "Excuse me, dear, I, too, am a poor devil," and the last word she naturally puts into the feminine. Moreover, the sentence is spoken in all the familiarity of the local dialect, a dialect that puts any two people at once upon equal terms, as nothing else can do it. Would it were possible to present the phrase to English readers in all its own helpless good humour. The excellent woman who uses it is practising no eccentricity thereby, and raises no smile. It is only in another climate, and amid other manners, that one cannot recall it without a smile. To a mind having a lively sense of contrast, it is not a little pleasant to imagine an elderly lady of corresponding station in England replying so to importunities for alms, albeit we have nothing answering to the good fellowship of a broad patois used currently by rich and poor, and yet slightly grotesque in the case of all speakers. A dialect in which, for example, no sermon is ever preached, and in which no book is ever printed, except for fun. A dialect familiar, but by no means vulgar. Besides, even if our Englishwoman could by any possibility bring herself to say to a mendicant, "Excuse me, dear, I, too, am a poor devil," she would still not have the opportunity of putting the last word punctually into the feminine, which does so complete the character of the sentence. The phrase at the head of this paper is the far more graceful phrase of excuse customary in the courteous manners of Portugal, and everywhere in the South, where an almost well-dressed old woman who suddenly begins to beg from you when you least expected it, calls you "my daughter," you can hardly reply without kindness. Where the tourist is thoroughly well known, doubtless the company of beggars are used to savage manners in the rich. But about the byways and remoter places there must still be some dismay at the anger, the silence, the indignation, and the inexpensive haughtiness wherewith the opportunity of almsgiving is received by travellers. In nothing do we show how far the West is from the East so emphatically as we show it by our lofty ways towards those who so manifestly put themselves at our feet. It is certainly not pleasant to see them there, but silence or a storm of impersonal protest, a protest that appeals vaguely less to the beggars than to some not impossible police, does not seem the most appropriate manner of rebuking them. We have, it may be, a scruple on the point of human dignity compromised by the entreaty and the thanks of the mendicant, but we have a strange way of vindicating that dignity when we refuse to man, woman, or child the recognition of a simply human word. Nay, our offence is much the greater of the two. It is not merely a rough and contemptuous intercourse. It is the refusal of intercourse. The last outrage. How do we propose to redress those conditions of life that annoy us when a brother whines, if we deny the presence, the voice, and the being of this brother, and if, because fortune has refused him money, we refuse him existence? We take the matter too seriously, or not seriously enough, to hold it in the indifference of the wise. "Have patience, little saint," is a phrase that might teach us the cheerful way to endure our own unintelligible fortunes in the midst, say, of the population of a hill village among the most barren of the maritime Alps, where huts of stone stand among the stones of an unclothed earth, and there is no sign of daily bread. The people, albeit unused to travellers, yet know by instinct what to do, and beg without the delay of a moment as soon as they see your unwonted figure. Let it be taken for granted that you give all you can, some form of refusal becomes necessary at last, and the gentlest, it is worth while to remember, is the most effectual. An indignant tourist, one who to the portent of a puggaree which perhaps he wears on a grey day, adds that of ungovernable rage, is so wild a visitor that no attempt at all is made to understand him, and the beggars beg, dismayed but unalarmed, uninterruptedly, without a pause or a conjecture. They beg by rote, thinking of something else as occasion arises, and all indifferent to the violence of the rich. It is the merry beggar who has so lamentably disappeared. If a beggar is still merry anywhere, he hides away what it would so cheer and comfort us to see. He practises not merely the conventional seeming, which is hardly intended to convince, but a more subtle and dramatic kind of semblance, of no good influence upon the morals of the road. He no longer trusts the world with the sight of his gaiety. He is not a whole-hearted mendicant, and no longer keeps that liberty of unstable balance whereby an unattached creature can go in a new direction with a new wind. The merry beggar was the only adventurer free to yield to the lighter touches of chance, the touches that a habit of resistance has made imperceptible to the seated and stable social world. The visible flitting figure of the unfettered madman sprinkled our literature with mad songs, and even one or two poets of to-day have, by tradition, written them. But that wild source of inspiration has been stopped. It has been built over, lapped and locked, imprisoned, led underground. The light melancholy and the wind-blown joys of the song of the distraught, which the poets were once ingenious to capture, have ceased to sound one note of liberty in the world's ears, but it seems that the grosser and saner freedom of the happy beggar is still the subject of a Spanish song. That song is gay. Not defiant, it is not an outlaw's or a robber's. It is not a song of violence or fear. It is the random trolling note of a man who owes his liberty to no disorder, failure, or ill fortune, but takes it by choice from the voluntary world, enjoys it at the hand of unreluctant charity, who twits the world with its own choice of bonds, but has not broken his own by force. It seems, therefore, the song of an indomitable liberty of movement, light enough for the puffs of a zephyr chance. End of section 8.